You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones getting you ready for week 20 of the 2024 CFL season. I got to tell you tonight, I'm not good with the whole Halloween scene, the Halloween season, just because I'm a big scaredy cat. And in Red Deer, the local Boys and Girls Club, they put on a haunted house every year, and I went to the preview night tonight. Oh, my blood pressure is still through the roof. When I left that haunted house, it was raining a little bit. And I saw what I thought was a ghost walking down the street, and it was somebody just wearing a raincoat. That's how affected I was by this haunted house. So if you're in central Alberta, it runs on now until Halloween. Go check out the haunted house. How do you do with the scares, Sheldon Jones?
I do okay now. When I was younger, not so well. I was in high school, early high school, and a friend's sister made us, or no, before that, when I was a kid, a friend's sister made us watch The Exorcist, and that screwed me up for a long time. And then in high school, we watched one of those stupid slasher movies. I think it was like Urban Legends or something, and that shouldn't have made me as scared as it did, but it did. And then I swore them off till I was an adult. But now I love horror movies, so I'm catching up. I'm like struggling if I want to watch these Terrifier movies or not, because I've heard some really bad things, but I have to watch it.
Now, here's for me, like the horror movies, if I watch them at home, they usually don't bother me because I know what's behind that door. I know that kind of stuff. If I watch them in the theater, I'm a wreck, a complete wreck. I have so many stories I can tell you where, man, I run basically like Khalil Pimpleton when I'm scared. Like so, I'll never forget this. I was probably in the 9th grade, and everybody at school, the teacher included, were sharing stories of Ouija boards, and I wasn't having it. And I remember that night, I'm in the bathroom, I'm on the toilet, and the power goes out. And I was convinced I was done for against an entity I couldn't see. I turned every light in the house on, and I remember I would, in stages, run to get to my bedroom. I'd run to the couch, rest, coast is clear. I'd run downstairs, and then at one point, I dived on the couch downstairs, and there's a figure on the couch. It's my dad. He's like, and he's sleeping. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, power went out." So then I go to bed, the power comes on at 5 a.m. Every light in the house fires off. But I was rescued that day. Another time, and this might have been one of my last times trick-or-treating. I was 10 years old, man. I started shaving when I was 12, so I did grow a lot faster than the other kids in my class. I was 10 years old. I walked to this person's door, and they go, "Aren't you too old to be doing this?" And that crushed my heart. But on that same trick-or-treating trip, we went to this house, and I didn't know it at the time, but this guy was sitting on the porch. He just kind of looked like the scary figure that wasn't a real person or whatever. And he had his yard roped off so nobody walked on the lawn. While I was at the door trick-or-treating, he stood up, scared me. I hopped the first rope onto the lawn, but I didn't hop the second rope. And I go head over heels on the concrete. I'm sure I left with several thousand calories worth of candy, but a concussion to go with that as well. So Halloween, I have a lot of memories surrounding this scary stuff, and clearly they've still affected me to this very day.
That's hilarious. I never had really any crazy Halloween stories, but I loved hearing that.
Week 20. Actually, no. Let's get to your power rankings. It's something we haven't done in a little while here. So following week 19, I got them up on the screen right now. I guess, would this be your second last power rankings of the season? The Bombers coming in at number 1. Some shuffling from 2 to 6. Maybe your third last power rankings. Are you looking at those right now?
Yeah, I got them here yet. Yeah, so we have Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Montreal, Toronto, Hamilton, Edmonton, BC, Ottawa, Calgary. Yeah, it's getting more apparent which teams are the hot ones going into the playoffs, because they're kind of dominating the top. I know Ottawa has been struggling, but I guess so is BC. Now they say that, that's kind of strange.
Well, what's amazing,
Hamilton in there,
and I kind of compared them to each other on the Week 19 recap, Ottawa and BC. They're both playoff teams, and they're both mightily struggling in the bottom third of the league. I'm sure the fans of those teams must be quite discouraged at this point.
Yeah, and they were teams that were near the top for the first kind of half of the season, just because of both the teams had hot starts and then they just kind of crashed. So those are the two teams that are, I would say, most likely going to be traveling on the first semifinal week, and they got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so I'm happy to have Sheldon back for this one as we get through week 20. I know I pulled this up on Twitter. I know that some were fans of only hearing my voice for 45 minutes straight. I'm happy that you're here to relieve me of that, although my wife would tell me I love hearing myself talk. But Jacques Cartier on X says, and I just realized this, he says, well, how can you not love Trav, especially when he's painting that mental image when, the AC goes out in the house and I'm just doing 2 and out in my undesirables, should I call them that? Well, here's the thing. Now you only see me from chest up, so I can still do the show on YouTube with no pants as we get ready for week 20 of the CFL season, as the Hamilton Tiger Cats are 4.5 point favorites over the Calgary Stampeders, the over-under at 51.5. Of course, neither of these teams are in the playoffs right now, but as I look at some of these games, there are still stakes. These games do mean something to the players involved. Now, Scott Milanovich in his media presser did say that he does want to get Taylor Powell some reps over the last couple games, but it does appear that Bo Levi Mitchell is going to be playing his former team in this one, and I don't know if they're just going to let Bo play these last couple games in black and gold, as I guess he will make a case to be the East nominee for MOP at this point, which is really crazy with how far the Ticats are out of the playoffs. But then Bo might have something to prove going into 2025, putting some things on tape showing that he can still sling the ball around and score touchdowns.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of players actually in these games who are looking to play for their years or for their contracts next year. But it's a little bit extra motivation for Bo playing against Hamilton or against Calgary again, and it's just very interesting how this goes, because if Milanovich really does want to get a read on Taylor Powell, then, I would hope that he would play him a little bit more. But I do want to see Bo get this time, because I think with his play and with, like you said, him probably being the East MOP, I think he deserves the chance to get to play for that contract next year.
Yeah, and, I guess the Ticats don't owe him anything unless, I guess I just can't see him being in Hamilton, no matter where Bo ends up. That being said, the way last year went, I think the folks in the Ticats organization probably would have liked to have seen Taylor Powell get even more reps this year, even though they had Bo in the fold, just to see, what else they had going into next year, right? Like, I think Powell did pretty good in a limited showing last year, but this year when he came in, and it's not his fault, he got hurt. Unfortunate that happens, but what's that do to his career trajectory? It could alter that path, which is unfortunate, but we've seen it happen a lot in pro football.
True, and I can't remember if Bo has guaranteed money in his contract or not next year, because when it's not like he signed with Hamilton as a free agent. He was actually traded from Calgary, and so because of that did give Hamilton the chance to add guaranteed money in the contract. So because if he does have guaranteed money in there, then it's going to be tougher for them to part with him.
So when Bo signed the contract, I just pulled this up on the Google machine. January of 2023, he signed a 3-year deal with the Ticats worth $500,000. But then January of this year, they agreed to a new contract structure. So Bo is still under contract with the Ticats through next year as well. But I guess with the way things started this year, him getting benched and things like that, I kind of assumed he would be out in Hamilton. Now, maybe they're going to want to hang on to him for another year if it is at all possible. Definitely interesting to watch there. The Dave Dickinson on the other side is going to want... he is a competitor. I see what the Stamps fans are saying online. They're very frustrated, and why wouldn't they be? 2 decades in the playoffs, and it's a very unfamiliar feeling. Kind of like when I was 12 years old and I had these hairs popping up on my chin. You didn't think I was going to say chin. I don't know why I'm relating it to that, but I am, and I did. But hey, really, there could be a 20-year-old kid out there that has never seen his favorite team miss the playoffs. That's crazy to think about.
It is crazy, and it's about time. Sorry. No, it's got to be tough for them because you're used to just a winning culture, and you're used to being able to get to that, pretty much 3 games where anything can happen, and you can get your way to a Grey Cup even if you didn't have a great regular season. So tough that it's happened, but now it's time to see if Dave Dickinson does have the tools to be able to fix this, and he might have to make some tough decisions. Might have to delegate some more responsibilities away from himself. We'll have to see how it goes.
Yeah, and they're going to be probably evaluating some guys, I'm guessing, on the PR. So there's going to be guys playing for their jobs next year. I want to give a shout out to Stampeder fan Austin Surson. He's a YouTube subscriber. He leaves us photos or comments all the time. Now, I asked any Stamps fans to help us out with some culinary pictures from the great McMahon Stadium because I haven't been able to go to a game there this year. So Austin posted pictures on our Facebook page of the Spudinator. And I don't think he did these all in one game. I would be very impressed if he did. But this massive baked potato, I'm a large person. I'd say half of my head, and it's probably bigger than a 10-pin bowling ball on my shoulders. But man, the sour cream, the bacon, the chives, the cheese, oh man. And that's not the only thing that Austin sent us a picture of. that you can get at the great, fabulous facility known as McMahon Stadium. The brisket that comes with this cornbread and coleslaw. The New Zealand meat pie. The cheesesteak you can get. And also the chicken sandwich. Austin says, that sums up my fancy food at McMahon this year. The pocket dog is also a treat, but I rarely get it as much as I like it. So shout out to Austin for sharing those culinary delights and McMahon Stadium. I know you wanted, Sheldon, a GoFundMe for us to get you to Calgary next year. I can't promise that, but if you start walking now, you might make it.
Now I just want a pocket dog.
Those are darn good.
They're good, but man, they always end up on the shirt because the cheese and the mustard and stuff just seeps right out. But it's worth it because it's, sigh.
And is this not the hard-hitting analysis the Canadian Football League wants on CFL.ca? Like, come on.
Apparently not.
That was the best, just taking a sip of the drink. But, Calgary and Hamilton, they got to play the game. They got to get it done. These teams are, they're going to want to win. Bo's going to want to show up Dave Dickinson in this one. And, hey, a big congratulations to Reggie Begelton, who received the President's Ring. And this is something that the Stamps have been doing since 1967. Given to the Stamps player who best demonstrates excellence on and off the field as voted by the players. Candidates are judged on their in-game contributions, leadership, inspiration, and motivational skills. Reggie Begelton getting presented with it for the first time. So congratulations to him. Derek Wigan actually won the last two President's Rings in Calgary. So congrats to Reggie for that. We know he's a great Stampeder on the field. He's a great Stampeder off the field in Calgary. The league's better with him, and the Stamps are lucky to have a player of that caliber on their roster as well. Bo playing his old team. It's possible that Matt Schiltz gets the start and plays his old team and the digs that he called home for the last little while in Hamilton. But I got to think that the Stamps are probably going to want to look at some of those other quarterbacks that they have on the roster, whether it be Logan Bonner, and maybe not this week, but they're probably going to want to get PJ Walker in for at least, I would say, a couple quarters before the season's up.
Yeah, I honestly, depending on how the game goes, I wouldn't be surprised seeing him in the fourth for a couple series just to get in there and get his feet wet, and then maybe they give him the whole last game against the Riders. I'm not sure, but I know they kind of brought him in late season to try to get a jump start for next year, but what better time than to get, to see what some live action shots can do. Interesting though, because have we seen the last of Jake Maier in Calgary? It seems like it. It seems like a lot of people were right, unfortunately, about Jake Maier. And that's not me trying to pat myself on the back. I was going to say,
are you going to pat yourself on the back?
No, I'm not, because I it doesn't make me happy that somebody who, was starting quarterback in the CFL failed. Obviously, yes, I'm not a Calgary Stampeders fan, but I don't want to see players do bad because that's not a good look for this league. So, it sucks that it didn't work out for Jake. Maybe another team will give him a chance, and he can see if he can put some work in, because he obviously made it to the show for a reason. But I know a lot of Calgary Stampeder fans are ready to see who's going to be next for them.
Yeah, it could be a changing of the guard in many ways in Calgary going into 2025. There's a doubleheader on Saturday, and it starts in Toronto with a very meaningful game as the Argos are 4.5-point favorites over the Ottawa RedBlacks. The over-under set at 49.5. This is the tackle hunger game in Toronto. And this is just something that the CFL does so well, and that's what makes this league so special in Canada. It's been 20 years, and I think it's north of 20 million pounds of food that have been raised. And Argo alumnus, the late great big man Chris Schultz, this was a cause near and dear to his heart. And I read a piece that Mike Hogan put together for Chris Schultz and the Tackle Hunger game. And I know Argo fans are going to come out in full force and support this great cause. But now it seems like the Argos are a team that I do not want to deal with in the playoffs. It seems like their defensive line has gotten healthy. They gave Winnipeg all sorts of problems. And just the way that Ottawa has been kind of limping along lately, this seems like a very tough situation for the RedBlacks. They're showing against Montreal, who I know is a strong team, and they're undefeated with their backup quarterbacks this year, which is, it's remarkable for that Alouettes team. But the amount of penalties that the RedBlacks took in that one, they really were their worst enemy. And they had every opportunity to earn home field for the playoffs. Now, if they want it, they got to go to Toronto and get that win against an Argos defense that I think is carrying a lot of momentum into this week. It's a rough situation for Ottawa, but Toronto, it looked like they were not going to have that home playoff game. Right now, they're in the driver's seat, Sheldon.
Yeah, and like you said, Ottawa is their own worst enemy, and Bob Dice needs to figure that out, and needs to find a way to get them to play a little bit or a lot more disciplined, whether it's, fining guys for penalties or whatever it is, because as they go into the playoffs, whether they're going to be playing in Ottawa or in Toronto, they need to be disciplined because, like you said, Toronto is getting hot, especially on defense right now. And, with Drew Brown taking first team reps, that's, I think a better situation for Ottawa because clearly he's been the best quarterback for them this season. And I know having Masoli and having Crum, who both do have experience, I think if Ottawa is going to get have any success in the playoffs, it's going to have to be with Drew Brown and them playing disciplined.
Yeah, there were some interesting quotes from Drew Brown this week saying he basically learned his lesson. He came back from injury too soon. And ended up having to miss a few more weeks with the ankle injury. We know that players will probably lie and tell staff that they're feeling better than they are, but it does appear that Drew Brown learned his lesson and looks like he's ready to go now. He's full strength, just in time for the playoffs. But man, they sure need that offense to get into a rhythm, and a very tough task against that Toronto Argonauts front. Now, some veteran guys have been hurt for the RedBlacks, including Braylon Addison, who this week started practicing in full again. Justin Hardy missed last week, the team's lead receiver. He was back in practice, and the offensive lineman Darius Bladak, who had to leave last week's game, was back at practice on Wednesday. So some veteran players that I'm sure the RedBlacks are happy to have out there. Devontae Dedman also limited in practice, a dynamic player that obviously Ottawa wants on the field. If we look at Toronto's injury report, it is pretty darn good, man. Kadeem Carey had to leave last week's game with the back spasms, but he is practicing in full. And then everybody else, for the most part, is pretty healthy. And the tickets are moving at BMO Field. It does seem like... And I realize that there are some Western fans that say, well... oh, we're going to celebrate 18,000 in Toronto or 21,000 in Montreal. Well,
I'm right, we are.
Yeah, because a couple years ago, it was worse. It was worse than that. And I actually saw a comment on our YouTube channel. I'm going to pull it up right now. there's some really positive trends happening with the Canadian Football League. Now, I don't think that the CTV experiment is maybe going as well as they'd hoped, but the ratings, the numbers, the ticket sales, we always like to focus on the bad. We focus on the decline in Regina, for example. But there's a lot of good things to focus on as well.
We also had one really good comment that was in French that I couldn't read. But
Did you
really
use a translator?
I tried to copy the text, but it wouldn't let me copy the text. Maybe if I was on a computer, actually, I'd be able to do that. But so I will do that, and thank you very much for the comment. Merci beaucoup.
So how do you know it's a good comment?
Because there was like a sentence at the end in English that was positive and affirming. So I assume the body of the message was also that way.
Okay, I'm glad. But James, he's writing a comment on our YouTube saying, maybe it's just me, but the CFL feels more popular this year. Seeing sellouts in Montreal and Winnipeg the same week is cool. They still have nice crowds in Regina as well. And hey, I agree, man. I think things have been great. And I think those Argo fans, man, they deserve it. They get made fun of in Toronto by fans that don't respect the CFL, but also by other CFL fans that make fun of them for being, Argo fans. I get it. There's light-natured ribbing everywhere, but they deal with a lot, man. And I think they deserve to be celebrated somewhat.
They do, especially considering it's been a tough season for some Argo fans to be Argo fans this year. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people who are dealing with that as well, and they're still able to get good numbers into the park. And so that's positive. And, I don't think we can ever look down on a fan base. I think we have good fans in every team. Some or in every market. Some have more than others, but the solid bases in these cities and teams is what the CFL is about. And I think the league is starting to do a lot of good things to help market it more. And I think, like James's comment, we're seeing that. And it may not be a huge growth, but I think we can definitely agree that we are on an upswing when, for the past few years, I think we've been on a downswing.
Yeah, that's totally fair, and I'm feeling good. I always feel good going into the Grey Cup, to be honest. I won't lie. I love this time of year, and it's nice to have the playoffs on the horizon, and it's nice to have a game here that means something. And I think Ottawa fans, Ottawa coaches are just going to want to see some passion, but also some discipline, because that hasn't been there. And if they're going to go to Toronto and they're going to take a silly penalty on every single positive play, it felt like that against Montreal. Anytime they made a play, they were taking a silly penalty. If they're doing that against Toronto, where they've finally now they're rolling. They got Mackay Polk, who's a deep threat. They've got the backfield that can make things happen. Janarian Grant, obviously on special teams, and then the defensive front, which I want no part of. Those guys will eat all night long. So Drew Brown, he's going to need good use of that ankle at BMO Field on Saturday. I do want to bring this up, a loss in the CFL community, as Ottawa RedBlacks and the Oseg family are mourning the passing of Rough Riders great Whit Tucker. He was a part of Ottawa's back-to-back Grey Cup wins in 1968 and 1969. He's a former CFL All-Star, 3-time East Division All-Star, and he holds the CFL record to this day for career yards per catch. 22.4 yards a catch. Isn't that wild?
Talk about a nice deep threat there.
Yeah, no doubt. When you're getting, on average, 22 yards of completion with a guy, that's wild. So, a tough loss. CFL legend, to be sure. The Saturday game at BC Place, where this surprised me, Sheldon. The BC Lions are 1.5 point favorites over the Montreal Alouettes, where the over-under is at 48.5. Now, this is where I say the BC Lions may know that they're not hosting a playoff game. It could be in Winnipeg. It could be in Regina the first weekend in November. But, and Montreal knows exactly where they're going to be when the playoffs start. But the stakes are high for the Lions. The struggles that they've run into after starting the season 5-1, the way that the offense has struggled with Nathan Rourke, the way that the defense has struggled over the last little while, they've got to get some things right. They've got a short time to do it, and Vernon Adams Jr. is now the starting quarterback again for the BC Lions.
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. I don't know why, if this is the way they were going to go, why they didn't put Vernon in to start the second half last week when they still had a chance. If they would have given Vernon a chance and didn't do the stupid onside kick to start the second half, the game could have went a lot different. I don't know, man. It's bizarre. I understand that, it hasn't all been Rourke's play. There's been other things, and it seems like he's kind of being scapegoated here. But at the same time, they went about this whole Nathan Rourke situation the wrong way. They should have been having Nathan Rourke the way that Vernon was. They should have let Vernon still have this team while getting Rourke back on to the path of being a CFL quarterback again, not throwing him to the fire. I think it split the room. I don't think they're going to admit that, and I think they're putting on a really good show because you see Vernon being the quarterback who's pumping this team up. You see him being the captain. And Vernon's been an ultimate team guy, you can tell. But you could also tell from his body language that he's been waiting for this for quite some time, and I think he thinks that he should have had it. So he's going to be playing with fire. He's going to want to show that, this is going to... that they should go with him in the playoffs instead of Nathan Rourke. But is it too little, too late?
Now... At the beginning of the year, and I think last year, Vernon Adams Jr. put a lot of this team on himself. And I think he really grew into being a solid leader with that BC Lions team and had really close relationships with that receiving corps. Well, business is business. I get it. Expecting Nathan Rourke to come back and have that magic of 2022. Now, I guess it kind of seems silly. And many of us thought, hey, maybe that is silly. Probably as the final whistle went after his comeback game. We were expecting too much out of him. But at that point, Vernon Adams Jr., I think he was still recovering from injury. But he was on MOP pace at the beginning of the year. There is a chance here. Vernon Adams Jr., he goes against his old team, the Montreal Alouettes, lights them up, and is the spark that this BC Lions team needs. Now, going on the road and winning in Winnipeg and winning in Regina, two of the most solid home field advantages in the CFL, is a tall task. But imagine the story that if Vernon Adams Jr. quarterbacks this team all the way to the Grey Cup, win or lose, and then they move on from him in the offseason. I'm cheering for that just to see the chaos.
In any other year, I think you're crazy. But this year has been anything but predictable. So anything can happen in this little lovely league. And, it's very possible that they could regain form and they could get back to where they were at the beginning of the season when they were being the dominant odds-on favorite to win the Grey Cup again. Stranger things.
Yeah, and I don't think people are talking about the struggles of the defense that the Lions have had. They at times just really haven't been able to get the stops that they need. The pressure on the quarterback hasn't been there. But there was a time when it seemed like the Lions were ticking. Their aerial assault was, it seemed like almost unstoppable. They had William Stanback rolling, and now we're at a time where neither of that is going on. And you brought it up last week, the Montreal Alouettes side, Jason Moss saying that there is no meaningless game. Darnell Sankey saying the same thing this week. And I feel like defenses are definitely wired a different way. Sometimes offenses will, and the OCs will, call some things a little bit more vanilla so they don't have all their looks shown going into the playoffs. But defenders, these guys play defense for a reason. You see how mad they are when they're pitching a shutout and then the guy misses a field goal and they give up 1 point. Like these guys are competing to the bitter end, and they're going to want to create some problems for Vernon Adams Jr. and the BC Lions. But the Alouettes, they probably want to get things rolling with their offense too. Cody Fajardo not playing last week. Congratulations to the new addition to the family there. Want to get probably some reps in him and get that offense rolling again, because early in the year, you remember, especially with Tyson Philpott in the lineup, it seemed like everything they did went well. They're running screens. They've got the big receivers that can block. Austin Mack just returned last week. He had 92 yards receiving. So I think there's still something to be said to get some rhythm going between Cody Fajardo and the rest of that offense.
Yeah, and they also have a bye week coming up too, the first bye of the playoffs. So they need to make sure that they stay fresh and they don't rest players too quickly. Actually getting Austin Mack, I didn't think that he was actually going to be back after that injury. So I'm really happy that he is back, and if him and Cody can get back on the same page as quick as is necessary here, that could be dangerous for the Eastern Conference there.
That's week 20 of the 2024 CFL season. We'll see what happens with Ottawa and Toronto here. Toronto can clinch that home playoff game if they beat Ottawa in this one. But then next week, it'll be Winnipeg, Montreal, Calgary, Saskatchewan. So Saskatchewan will know before that last game with Calgary whether they've got a chance at hosting that West Final or not. Obviously, Montreal is probably, they are at home. Maybe they'll play their starters for a quarter or something like that. But
it makes actually more sense for them to rest some more people this week on the road than at home, I would say. So that's a fair point.
That's how they do it in the preseason anyway. Completely different now, but hey, sometimes the backup gets in there and he wants to make magic happen. So if they're going to be playing Davis Alexander, who, I guess is undefeated this year, maybe they could spoil a West Final hosting gig for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But maybe that is just a pipe dream for everyone else other than Bomber Nation. I will say that. Make sure you go to twoandout.ca. You can find the Patreon link there. You can find the merch shop link there. And Sheldon, I don't have my fantasy lineup ready yet. There's only 3 games, so not much to choose from this week. But let's just pick the winners. I'm going Hamilton and Toronto. I'm going to pick the Lions in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if they lost, but they got some stuff to figure out. It is their last game of the year as they're on bye next week. I'm picking the Lions in this one, Sheldon. Who are your 3 picks?
They're the same as yours.
All right. There we go. You can rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcatcher. You can like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube as well. Take care of yourself and each other. We will talk to you after the weekend to go through week 20.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.